A sailing ship is making its way to San Francisco. Young children Richard and Emilino are exploring the ship. A father scolds his son for endangering himself and his girlfriend and asks that the children be brought back on deck. Richard asks Dad if Mom is coming to visit them in San Francisco. And then Amy says that once someone is taken to heaven, no one ever comes back from there, while remembering her parents who died. A little later, Richard's father speaks to the captain, from whom he learns that the ship will soon fall into a fog band as the ship has deviated from its course due to strong winds. Meanwhile, Emilino watches cook Patty Button pluck a chicken. In the cook's quarters, Richard finds pictures of naked women, and Emilino notices that they are wearing no clothes at all. At this point, Button enters the room and threatens to spank the children for rummaging through other people's things. At that moment, however, a fire starts on the ship, puffs of smoke billow from the hold, and the captain orders the cook to take the children and Richard's father and put them in a dinghy. One of the sailors shouts that there is gunpowder in the hold, after which everyone begins to leave the ship in a hurry. As a result, Richard's father and the captain end up in another boat, while the children remain with Button. The ship explodes, and Richard's father starts screaming and calling for his son. Button hears him, but because of the thick fog they cannot be seen, and the boats separate in different directions. The children and Button have no choice but to drift in the ocean and wait for help. The next day they are awakened by a trunk hitting the side of the boat. Button begins to take things apart, but finds nothing useful there. Toward evening, the children begin to say that they are very thirsty. Button tries to distract them by getting them to listen to the sun, which hisses as it sinks gently into the water on the horizon. In the morning, Emilino wakes up and says he smells flowers. Patty opens her eyes and sees the islands. With shouts that now they will be saved, Button rushes the dinghy toward shore. Barely setting foot on the tropical island, Button quickly finds a source of fresh water, and Emilino discovers a barrel of rum nearby. Richard finds remains nearby. The cook realizes that they may be in danger here and tells the children to get out of here. After climbing to a high point, they look out over the ocean, where no other lifeboats with the ship's crew and Richard's father can be seen. During this time, Emilino eats a poisonous berry. Noticing this, Button makes her spit it out immediately and tells her that whoever tastes these berries will fall asleep forever and never wake up again. Toward evening, Button makes a bonfire, and Emilino reminisces about the dead cat and how it was buried. It is clear from the conversation that the little ones don't understand at all yet what death is. Button was amused to listen to the children's speculation that the cat probably ate the same berries and then went to sleep forever, as well as Emilino's story about the infant of a Mrs. Jones. The next day, the boy looks at the pictures he found in the trunk, which depict various people's weddings. Richard asks Patty if he has been married, to which Button replies that he has been married 7 times in every port he has ever been in. He now has 17 children, all of whom are different, and many of whom he has never even met. Next we see the cook teaching the boy elementary things: to tie knots, make a fire, and build a simple hut, and he himself leaves marks on the tree, which denote the number of days spent on the island. One day, Button goes to the far side of the island and finds human remains there. The man realizes that they are not alone on the island, and there was clearly a sacrifice, after which he tells the children never to go to the other side of the island, that supposedly there is a monster there that eats children. In the evening at the campfire, Patty drinks rum and puts on an impromptu play for the children. Afterward, Button falls asleep. In the early morning, while the children sleep, the rum-intoxicated man sails off somewhere with an empty keg. When the children wake up, they start looking for Patty. Richard spots Button on the other shore and sets off after him with Emmeline. Upon reaching the spot, the children discover that Patty is dead, and what they see makes Annie faint. Richard carries the girl into the boat, and they return back to the cabin. After Annie regains consciousness, The girl asks Richard to take her away from here, and together they go to another island nearby. Now they will have to cope with everything on their own, build a new hut, and get their own food. As time passes, we see how the boys have grown up. Richard gets pearls from the bottom of the ocean and deceives Emmy that Santa came to them and left gifts for them. However, Emelina quickly realizes that Richard did it all. The guy asks the girl why they started fighting so often. Amy says that she doesn't know. She just has some strange thoughts all the time, and sometimes she doesn't know why she says something hurtful to him. The next day, Amy goes for a swim and is startled when she sees blood in the water. The girl calls out to Richard, but then instinctively becomes self-conscious, realizing that something is wrong with her, and chases the guy away. A little later at the campfire, Richard asks if she's okay and offers to examine the girl's wound. Emelina gets angry and asks to be left alone. Next, we watch Amy start to feel attracted to the guy, and Richard thinks the girl is sick with something. By evening, the guys are admiring the sunset and reminiscing about their parents. Richard hopes that someday their father will find them and take them off this island. He remembers Pad telling them stories and wants to know why he died. However, Emelina doesn't want to talk about it and leaves the boy alone. Richard's curiosity does not give him rest. He wants to know the answers to all questions. Why is the sea hurt in the shells? Why does hair grow on his body? Amy says that only God, in whom Richard does not believe at all, knows all the answers. A little later, they hear strange sounds, like someone beating drums, and Emelina thinks it's probably the monster Patty told her about as a child. Richard says that if it threatens him, he will impale it with a spear. In the morning, the guy goes fishing, and Amy laughs at Richard because all the fish he scares away she easily catches with her hands. Afterward, it starts to rain heavily, and the boys head to the cabin. Richard plays a homemade musical instrument, and Amy does not like such music. The girl makes the guy stop playing by poking him with a stick, after which they just frolic. The next day, Emelina again hears strange sounds and goes deep into the island, where she finds a huge stone. The girl returns to the cabin and tells Richard that she found God. However, the guy does not want to listen to her. At night, Amy has nightmares. The girl screams, and Richard comes up to her. The guy calms her down, hugs and kisses her, but the girl asks him to stop doing that. When Amy falls asleep, the guy comes to her again, and once again, Emelina chases him away. In the morning, Emelina notices the guy at a strange activity, and Richard asks the girl to leave. A little later, the guy notices a ship with white sails on the horizon and runs to the hut, near which branches are prepared for a signal fire, but notices that Amy did not even lift a finger. Meanwhile, the ship is already out of sight, and in a rage Richard says that he doesn't need anyone. He will sail away on his makeshift raft. Emelina watches as the raft falls apart and Richard makes his way back. The girl laughs at him, saying that this is the 4th time he's tried, and it's the same each time. Emelina fights with Richard, after which the guy throws the girl's things out of the cabin and says he doesn't want to live with her anymore. Next, we see how smug Richard easily gets his own food and hides from the rain, while Emelina can't even make a proper fire. The next day, Amy injures her leg on a sharp fish fin, after which the girl becomes very ill. Apparently, she gets a fever. The guy notices that something has happened to the girl and wants to help her. Emelina asks Richard to take her to God. There, the guy begins to pray and realizes how much he cares for the girl. He asks that God does not take her away, because he cannot live without Amy. After a while, the girl gets better, and Richard takes her back to the cabin. The guys go swimming together in the sea, after which they engage in division by 0. From that moment, Richard and Amy start doing it more and more often, and after a while, Emelina realizes that she is pregnant. One night, Richard wakes up from strange sounds and goes into the jungle to the sound of a drum. There the guy stumbles upon a primitive tribe, where he witnesses a rite of sacrifice. Richard with horror returns to the hut, where he catches Emelina, who went into labor. As a result, a son is born to the couple, whom they name Paddy. Amused, Richard asks Amy why she gave birth to a baby and how it could have happened in the first place. The next day, the guy tells Amy about what he saw in the jungle and says that if they come near them, he will protect them and impale anyone with a spear. After a while, Richard is sent to another island where he and they once left Button. He is frightened by the fact that there is practically nothing left of the cook. After that, Richard goes back. Further, we see that the young parents bring up their son and teach him everything they know themselves. One day, a ship approaches the island. We see Richard's father, who still has not given up and continues to search. However, the boys do not give them any signals. They decide to stay on the island. Richard's father doesn't recognize the kids as they are grown up and says that it can hardly be them. Eventually, the ship sails away, and Emelina asks Richard to take her to another island. Arriving at the place, the guys find a hut, of which almost nothing is left anymore. Richard finds a toy he once made, and the child collects poisonous berries and puts them in the boat while the boy goes to get bananas. The boat is carried out to sea by the waves. Emelina, who has fallen asleep, comes to her senses when the child throws an oar out of the boat. Amy tries to retrieve it, but she fails. After that, she calls Richard. The boy swims to the boat. However, he starts to be chased by a shark. Amy throws the predators a second oar, after which the shark controls the guys at rest. Together, they try to row with their hands to get the oars, but they do not succeed. With a section, the boat is carried farther and farther into the open sea, and after a while they are all thirsty and hungry. While the parents sleep, the child eats poisonous berries. When Paddy falls asleep, Richard realizes they have no chance. He then divides the berries in half for himself and Emmeline. In the final scenes of the movie, we see the boat come within sight of the King's Guard. The sailboat takes a course straight towards her. Finding 3 people in the boat, the sailor informs Richard's father that the family is just sound asleep. You are on the channel on Recap Roman. Don't forget to subscribe and put a like to not miss new videos.